Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
The truth shall set you free.
You can't handle the truth.
We came, we saw, we kicked his ass.
That's not how the Force works.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
I'd buy that for $1.
Hasta la vista, baby.
This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
Hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients. That's not important right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Control Movie Podcast, brought to you by Zito's Gang, where we reshape cinema for the better. I'm your host, Kenan Akbulut, and thank you for joining us for episode 5. So on each episode, we discussed that if we had creative control, how we would shape a future movie project or correct mistakes of the past. Joining me on today's episode, for episode 5, we have fellow Zito Gang stars, Sasha Alari and Neil. How you doing, gentlemen?
Good, very good.
Good to have you. And our special guests today are Sal and Jessen Arunachalam. How you guys doing?
All good here.
Brilliant. Thank you for inviting me.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. So today's episode is all about creative control over the Indiana Jones franchise. So what should we do next? Is it a sequel? Does it include a passing of the torch? Should it be recast with a continuation of the character in current timeline, like a James Bond? Or should we just go for a complete recast and a complete reboot? So if you had creative control, Jessen, what would you do?
I think we should keep it as it is. If it's going to be talking about the next film and what's happening, you could, with what the technology has, you can like de-age them. Mm-hmm. So you can fit him back in the 30s or 40s. You know, controversially, I actually enjoyed aspects of the fifth one because I saw it. Each is a period. So you got the Pulp Fiction of the 30s and you got the sci-fi Pulp Fiction. That's where all the aliens and stuff I saw were doing in the B-movie aspect. Mm-hmm. Other aspects I didn't agree with. But they could easily de-age him and just get a stunt person to do certain aspects. Harrison as the actor, keep him in the scene, stuff like that. Jumps and stuff like that. If you can't do it, get a stuntman. They've done that before, but I mean,
Funnily enough, for Harrison Ford, he does, with the exception of Temple of Doom, where 90% of that was a stuntman because he had a big, massive injury on that actual production, which meant they had to get a body double for that. Crystal Skull, he did all his stunt work himself, except for 2 stunts, and he's still very much in shape. And on top of that, the previous Blade Runner, no stunt double.
Okay,
and he even punched Ryan Gosling in the mouth.
Yeah, I heard that story.
I mean, he might have just done that anyway. He's a grumpy bastard. But
Slapped him and then he gave him like a glass of bourbon and it rolled out.
Yeah. But as it turns out, Harrison Ford's been at the gym since The Last Crusade for these films. So, you know, I think if they had a stunt person, that would be cool for like anything major, kind of like what Jackie Chan does these days. But I think if it's him versus another guy in a fist fight, Harrison Ford's still in shape to not give someone an ass whooping. So, but anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yes, what else would you do with it?
Well, I think it's just like I think some people just didn't like the aspect of they moving into the 50s and because of Harrison's age and stuff like that, technology can de-age them and put him back into the 30s if they want to. Or, I mean, me and Sasha just talking about the sort of like the young Indiana Jones where you saw Harrison with a patch and everything else. You can kind of not recon it, but add that sort of element where he's older, but he's still that strong guy. And have a bit of a sidekick sort of thing aspect to that. You know, there's so much you can do with that. And some listeners might not remember, but Dark Horse Comics, they had the Indiana Jones comics, and they had the one of the city of Atlantis. And that was a great story. Like, or even if they're doing it in the UK, do something about King Arthur. I had some of the young Indiana Jones or the Indiana Jones books. And I'm sure there's one about King Arthur
Mm-hmm.
If they'd film it in the UK, use the British mythology,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much, and do a better job than say Transformers 5.
Oof.
What's that got to do with King Arthur?
Yeah, didn't they had like Knights of the Round Table? And
Yeah.
had like
Oh
Merlin.
yeah, the Transformers version.
Yeah,
I don't remember that. I don't remember
Oh,
that.
so
and I was
bad.
with
You don't
Ken.
Yeah, there was like a robot dragon around,
Yeah.
or something like that. It was Sasha's looking like, I do not remember this film.
I don't remember this. I must have been so traumatized I just blocked it from my memory.
Yeah.
I don't remember
It was called
this.
The Last Night, so it was all to do with the Excalibur, the swords, and all.
Yeah.
Oh, just mental.
Wow.
All right, Justin, that's cool. Neil, if you had creative control of Indiana Jones, what would you do?
God. Well, okay, so for me, like, I'm not a fan of like unless you have no choice. I'm not a fan of like making a reboot where you completely like wipe out the last film's events. I'm like, you have to keep them because, like it or not, there's people that are gonna remember them.
Mm-hmm.
But I would actually have a proper passing of the torch. And it's not necessarily the passing of the torch where we say like, okay, at the end of the film, you know, Indy dies or something, but just a passing of the torch in as much as the essence of the character moves on.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I'd kind of look at it is, I mean, like I said, I wrote a bit of a treatment, so to speak. So I'll say, we'd start with like a bunch of people breaking into like an airplane hangar. So I'm gonna say, you know, we're roughly set. What year was the last one set? In the 60s, right? Or the 50s?
50s.
50s.
Cool. We're still in the 50s, right? And I'll say that, you know, a group of people are breaking into like an airplane hangar, and obviously they're clearly looking for something. We don't know what. I'm going to say that they basically find it. It's something, you know, small enough that it could be transported. Maybe it's a medallion, some kind of artifact. They wind up getting ambushed by another group of people. We're going to say that this is the villains of the piece. Probably do it as it's like a former Nazi, because I'm like, Indiana Jones works well with Nazis, right? You know, so I'd say that the first group, they kind of, all of them barring one, get killed.
Mm-hmm.
And this one person, you know, who's like basically trying to get away, what they do is, as they're kind of like trying to run away and escape, they stash the artifact, whatever it is. For the argument's sake, we're going to call it a medallion.
Mm-hmm.
They stash this medallion in an envelope, and they kind of like scroll the address of they scroll a destination there on it, and like they find like a mail or a mail bag, and they just like, you know, launch it in there with all of that.
Hold on one second, Neil. Can you go back about 10 seconds? Is someone struggling with their microphone?
Yeah, right. So they basically, when they're running around, they find a room that's got a bunch of mail bags in it. So they're like, oh, okay, this is going to travel somewhere. Maybe they find one that says, you know, traveling to, you know, the US. So I said that they stuff the medallion into an envelope, quickly scroll an address on it, and then, like, you know, push it into the mail bag, and then they run off somewhere else. Essentially, they get caught. And the villain is like, oh, you know, so where is it? We know you found it. Where is it? The person doesn't give it up, and, you know, the person gets killed off. You know, they get shot dead. And what then happens is, you know, everyone's kind of, you know, all the bad guys are all searching around the hangar for the medallion or whatever it is. They can't find it. Mm-hmm. And then what we see is, you know, the people coming in for their shift, the people who work there, they are walking in. There's a group of them. All the bad guys kind of like slide out and try and hide. a pilot gets into the plane. They'll all be speaking, I'm going to say Spanish. So we're going to say that this is set in, you know, Latin America, probably South America, or maybe Central America.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all speaking Spanish, and the pilot gets into the plane, they close it up, and then old school indie style, we follow the plane like a red dot as it just travels up to America. When we get there, what we see a very similar package being landing on like a kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
Who shall open it but Indiana Jones? He opens it, and however, it's not the medallion. It's actually just like a little something. Maybe it's a parcel or something coming from Mutt, you know, that character. You know, we gotta say they still exist. They've been established. So we'll say it's coming from them. They're somewhere else in the world. And, you know, it's Indy. He's at home, you know, in America. He's still a teacher. Maybe he's like become like, I forget what the character's name was, the one who was helping him.
Marcus Brody.
Yeah,
Marcus
right.
Brody.
Yeah, so it's like maybe he's now in Marcus's position where he's the dean. Maybe he's still just an actual teacher. I'd kind of like it if him still being the teacher, because I feel like Indy would be the kind of guy who wouldn't want to like move up and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna sit behind a desk now. He's like, nah.
Yeah, he's probably got tenure in it, so he's just like he's chilling.
So he's still there, and he's still a teacher, but he's cleared. You know, he's getting on a bit. So regardless of whatever shape Harrison Ford is in, his adventuring days are winding down.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a bit. You can see he's a bit bored, so to speak. But he's like, all right, I'm cool. I'm living. He's teaching a class. In this class, you know, while he's teaching, we've got a student in there, young female. I'm gonna say that she's a bit reminiscent of Marion Ravenwood. So it's kind of like we'll give him that he's got a bit of an affinity for this student, right? And she's hella intelligent. You know, she's like, you can tell, okay, this character might have some level of importance. And, you know, she's very smart. She's answering questions, throwing it back at him. And it's like they're having a discussion. You know, you can see the other students in the class are kind of like, what are we, chopped liver? You know, but who cares about them? Then we cut to this young woman, and she returns home after school. And what we see is in the garden of her house, maybe it's the front yard, backyard, whatever, there's a little girl, I don't know, maybe 8-9 years old. She's very tomboyish. We see her, she's wearing dungarees. Her hair's clearly plaited in the tomboy pigtails. And she's like jumping off of like, I don't know, part of the fence to land in the dirt, or she's digging for something. She, you know, a real tomboy. Find out this is her sister. Go inside the house. We meet her father, and we find out that maybe her mother's passed away, right? So that's, you know, we give her a reason why she's a bit more tomboyish, is because, you know, back in those times, she wasn't raised by a mother, so she's not as feminine as certain people may want her to be.
Yeah.
She decides to take her sister out for ice cream. And it's like, cool. But as she leaves, she's like, oh, Dad, this was in the mailbox. She puts down, scratch that bit. But she, you know, she takes her sister out for ice cream. But as they leave, we see, you know, a car turn up at the house. So you kind of know where I'm going from this. They return from having their ice cream. They find the house has been ransacked. Dad's dead. Right. Then we cut to the funeral. At the funeral, we see the girls. We see, you know, people who are clearly the grandparents. We also see that, you know, some of our fellow students, and Indy is there, right? And what we kind of, you know, get from the funeral and everything, what we're going to have happen is that her father and Indy knew one another. They weren't super best friends, buddies, but they knew each other. They, you know, they had an acquaintance. They both had an affinity for archaeology, maybe. So Indy, you know, he's there and he's like, look, if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask. She's like, okay, cool. No, you know, fine. Then we cut to the grandparents taking the youngest daughter, taking her sister, taking her away. and saying like, okay, look, you need to stay here because you need to finish school, but you can't do your schoolwork and look after a little girl at the same time. So we'll take her, you'll stay here, finish your schooling, and then when you finish your schooling, we'll see what happens. So all of that goes, and as that car drives away, the postman turns up. Postman turns up with his envelope, and we see it is the item that we were tracking. It's that medallion. It's arrived now. So she's looking at it. She doesn't understand it. There's a little note in there maybe that says, "Oh, says maybe her dad's name is Jeff, and it says, look, Jeff, I finally found it, but I need help with this. I'm never going to be able to do this by myself." Whatever it says, she doesn't understand it, but she recognizes that it's a relic. So she takes it to the only place she knows she can. She takes it to Indy. When we get there, she's talking with Indy, and he basically, when she says what it is and she gives it to him, he's like a bit, oh, well, that, okay. And then she's like, well, you're going to have to explain that. And then he gives her a bit of backstory about her family that she didn't know, which would be that her uncle worked with her father, and they were both kind of archaeologists. Basically, all of them were in that kind of field. But obviously, Indy was like, 500-600 million steps above them. But they were all doing their thing. However, what happened was when her mother became pregnant with her, he put it to bed. He was like, okay, look, I got a family. I can't be running around the world digging in dirt. So she's like, okay, cool, that's fine. And obviously that leads to them kind of being like, well, what do I do about this? And you can see Indy, he's got that itch. Like, he's like, this could be an adventure to go on. But he's like, well, I don't really know what to tell you to do. Or in his own Indy way, maybe he's like, look, if you're going to go for it, then go for it. But it's dangerous. You can tell it's dangerous in the fact that your uncle, your dad is dead because of this. Mm-hmm. But they're having a talk. She decides, no, you know what? I'm going to go look for my uncle. And she asks Indy to help her. And again, he's like, are you sure you want to do this? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. Let's go. At first, he's going to say no. Like, he's going to be like, I can't do this, But after he says that and the girl's like getting ready to leave, Ms. Ravenwood, she's going to pop up. And then this is where you'll see what I was describing, where I said there's a little similarity between them, where she's like, just go. She's like, Indy, you're bored here. You clearly, you miss the thrill of it. And it was like, you know what? I miss the thrill of you having the thrill going to get it. So go on out there, get it done. So maybe Marion goes with them. Maybe it's just Indy and the girl, but they go off to find their adventure. And then it kind of turns into a bit of similar to the last one, where it's Indy and the girl are looking for her uncle with the medallion, and the bad guys are looking for them and the uncle, and it's a bit of a chase to see who's going to get where. But obviously that's as far as I got in what I wrote. But it's essentially a thing of the way the torch is passed is sort of like in Force Awakens, the relationship between Rey and Solo. That relationship, it was, even though it was only lightly touched on in just one or two bits, where like he hands her the gun and she's like, kind of, I think she says something along the lines of, I know how to use it, and he's like, I know, that's why I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a thing of, it's that, but it's not the kind of antagonistic relationship that we got where it was Mutt and Indy.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, actually take some time to have a thought process where it's, you have this girl who's essentially, she's lost her father, her mother's not around, she's essentially an orphan now, but she's has this father figure, so he's almost like an uncle to her, and he is a kindred spirit because he's an archaeologist, and just kind of move things along like that. And I don't know where other than me wanting it to be set in Latin America or in Central America.
Okay.
I don't really have a big thing about, where it could possibly, where things could go, what could happen. I just know really and truly that the end of it, the torch would be passed on to her. Not to say that there would be another film after this.
Yeah.
Like it would be, I would like it to be the very last film.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last film in such a way where it's like, the end of Last Crusade, where all of them are on horseback and they're just riding off into the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's that.
Okay.
All of them riding up. I would like Indy to kind of take on the mantle of Sean Connery's character in The Last Crusade, in as much as it's clear that he ain't going to be running around doing this again later. It may be his last hoorah, but he's passing it on to what you would say at least somewhat of a worthy successor, because Shia LaBeouf is a great actor, but he ain't no Indiana Jr.
Yeah. I think, it could have worked back in 2008, but it's like 12 years since then now, and as an actor, he's moved on. It's not within that realm now. So yeah, I don't see that
now.
All right. Relatively short for you. Well done.
I just realized what you meant by the script when you were saying that before.
There you go.
I did not get it.
Right. So Sal, what would you do if you? Yeah,
Sorry,
go on.
I'm gonna have to go now. So
thank you very much, Jason. Thanks for your input, and check out the rest of the episode for all the final thoughts.
Later on, bro.
Peace.
So Sal, what would you, if you had creative control, what would you do?
Well, it's difficult because, I like you guys who have been like big fans of this particular franchise. Me, I've been a fan, but not that massive a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself that, except for the original one, the first one, found myself hating the endings of almost all of them. Like, I enjoyed the movie completely and thoroughly all the way until the end, where the ending comes and closes and you go like, what on earth was that? And that was from me. That was me, really. I didn't like fourth's ending. I didn't like third's ending. Even with Sean Connery, we were looking at the chest, like, okay, something will happen. For me, let's say it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. With this, it depends. What I've been reading about it, they seem to be wanting to do more and more and more. But I'd rather that they just finish it, like end it, And if they do plan to end it, then go out with a bang, do something brand new. I would rather have them do something completely new, not revisit everything that we have been doing again and again and again. There's certain elements that people love. Maybe you can incorporate them, but certain elements, why not bring some new elements as well? The Nazi thing's always been around, but they already reached the 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless they want to keep on dragging that, and that would go back to what Neil said, Latin America, that would work because we all sort of believed, because most of the Nazis ran away and they went there.
To Argentina. That's why I was like,
exactly
in Latin America.
So,
then
exactly.
Now they become Hydra.
It's only exactly. So it's not only in Argentina; it's also southern Brazil as well.
Yeah.
If you basically, like, I've got a bunch of Brazilian friends, and they tell me that everybody you see who are more or less white are either Italians or Germans that showed up after the war. And like, after the war, I wonder what kind of Germans were they. Anyway, so anyhow, I'd rather have them do something new. Thank God they won't have Shia LaBeouf. That's fine. For me, let's find a complete brand new set of people. You don't meant to, because everybody's also aging. It is sometimes hard to see and hard to get people to do things. They're in 80s, most of them.
Yeah, Ford's like 78 now, I think.
He's 78 this year, exactly.
Yeah.
So by the time the movie's going to come out, he's past 80, right?
Just turned.
Sorry?
What's that, Sasha?
It was his birthday the other day, so yeah, he's
So he's 78
just
now.
turned 78.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
by the time this one is going to come out, it's going to be 80, easy. So why not do something? Why not do like a full-on adventure roller coaster of a movie where it starts off from a fast pace, has a little lull in the middle, and then fast pace again. Have a full-on ride. I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but if you guys ever been to the Disney World, Disneyland, Indiana Jones ride, it's a full-on ride. It's literally a ride. It's like a roller coaster going from one thing to another thing, and that would be a brilliant thing to go. It would be a brilliant way to end a franchise. Because I'm not sure how long they can drag it. If they're planning to drag it, then I would start the movie with a brand new character, like a brand new, and have Harrison Ford come in some way, let's say a third of a movie in, and then start teaching or helping that character rather than lead that character. Because once you have accepted there's a new character, you wouldn't look for the old one, and you can have the old one as a nice little, dessert in the middle sort of a thing, a little sweet spot in the middle, and then it goes. So you win the crowd by just having something brand new and letting them run the show.
Okay.
So not just one new character, multiple new characters, and you can have some of the old characters just come in to help, nothing more.
Yeah,
Because
just some
it is
cameos.
it's cameos, but cameos that essentially are maybe, let's say, the crucial points in the movie, but at the same time, plot points. But at the same time, it's not their movie. So what I mean to say is they don't tag along throughout the whole thing, and that way you would just sell the new idea, and from then onwards you can keep on going. Probably, if it sells well, you can keep the franchise going.
Okay.
But for me, I'd rather have a roller coaster because I used to enjoy these sort of movies, and we haven't had any of these. I mean, can you guys remember any movie that had treasure hunting in the last 30 years, and or running away from something, and then a whole adventure roller coaster where someone's basically living out in the backwoods and running from point A to point B to point C to point? Hasn't happened in the last 30 years.
It has, but it's been terrible.
Oh,
there's
awful.
that, yeah.
Most of them are TV movies, and you just sit there and go like, "What is
I don't
this?"
know. I like National Treasure.
Oh,
That's probably the only one, to be fair.
And Brendan Fraser's Mummy.
Mummy.
Oh,
yes.
And-
That's true. That's true. I completely forgot about them.
Probably the first Mummy, but yeah.
The first one. Yeah.
I mean, unless like Sony pull their fingers out and actually make the Uncharted movie that I want to see, and not this Tom Holland.
Oh, they're already
rubbish.
filming.
They just started filming. Yeah.
Started filming on Uncharted.
I mean, that IP has potential to be a modern day Indiana Jones, but
It does.
It depends what they do with it. Have any of you guys played the Uncharted games?
Yeah, I've played the first one, so I'm kind of aware of the character and stuff like that. So, yeah.
How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about Tom Holland playing him?
I mean, I'd have preferred,
taller guy.
Nathan Fallon.
I'm sorry.
Nathan Fallon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, I saw the short movie that he did.
The short movie.
Brilliant.
Yeah, where he was Nathan.
Yeah.
I'm like that.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Spot on.
That's what I want. That's like that. I'm like literally, it was like looking from game to movie, game to screen. It was just there, and it was perfect. Gelled. But how often is the fan favorite the person that gets picked?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, they're looking at the franchise, they're looking at the marketability of Holland, what he's done with Spider-Man, and so they just know that with him on the with Mark Wahlberg, that's going to sell, because Mark Wahlberg movies, even though they're not great, they make bank. So it's a combination of those two. I was in two minds, so I'm going to just do my pitch quickly because I know Sasha is more of the guru on this. So he loves his Indiana Jones. I like Indiana Jones, but I don't have the same passion as Sasha. So the way I kind of looked at it was either two ways of doing it for me. It was either going to be Bond-esque, so the character history remains, the stories remain, you just bring in a new actor and they are Indiana Jones. There's no build-up, there's no discussion, that's just who they are. And then you take the franchise forward with that. I think that is one way of doing it and keeping that Indiana Jones line continuous as a brand, because the only trouble is when you have a passing of the torch, unless that character is called Indiana Jones, you're not going to be able to call the next movies Indiana Jones. So that is something that played on my mind, but I want to give Ford his due. I want him to wrap it up. I want to correct the mistakes potentially of the last one. So I did go for a sort of like a passing of the torch kind of thing. So the way I see it is, I want to see it set as far after the last one as possible. So for me, this is a drama. This can start off like a drama about Indiana Jones at the end of his days. You know, he was chasing fortune and glory. Where did it get him? Estranged from his family. So, you know, the son that he suddenly found in the last one doesn't talk to anymore. He doesn't have any of these relationships. And the only thing left he has is his teaching. And he's going into his final, so similar to what Neil had in his pitch. So teaching is the only thing that's keeping him going, but now he's going into his final year teaching. And he gets a new student who recaptures his passion for adventure. You know, it takes an interest in them. You know, they show smart, they show willingness. And, you know, they eventually show him their personal research they've done on a particular project. I was going for Lost City of Atlantis to tie in a little bit to, because it's stuck in my mind because Sasha's always been talking about the game and how that should have been a movie and that should have been like the last one or even the second, third one, whatever it was. But
Right.
so then Jones has all this research that he's done over the years and they come together, they find a clue. And then obviously the young students like, come on, we should follow this through. Like Neil said, you know, he needs a lot of convincing. He's not really into it to start with. But, you know, it's a last chance for glory, you know, bring home some evidence to show the world and, you know, cement his legacy. So instead of that father-son relationship, we're going to have that teacher-student relationship. I suppose it is going to be a little bit similar to, you know, maybe like The Force Awakens in that sense, and Rey. But the way I see it is I want it passed on to a young black student and young black actor. And who also is just going to happen to have the surname Jones. And the reason why I have that is because it's going to be set in the late 60s. So it's going to be set at least 10, 15 years after the last one. So it's just going to be coming out under the civil rights movement. So you're going to have that playing in the background. And, you know, you might have all these students who are uncomfortable with this intelligent student in their class. So which probably gives Ford a lot of protection over him. And because he had a previous name and he had a slave name and he's just changed his name to Jones because it's quite a common name. He's kind of just changed his name to Jones. So he's called Jones as his surname. And yeah, you have that play out throughout the movie. You're going to have sort of like the racist connotation of the characters they meet. Nazis are not a thing anymore, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to focus on a particular country or ethnicity. I think that Disney would struggle with that now. So rather than having it a China or Russia as the enemy, it's going to be an international corporation. So you're going to have all the different elements to all different countries. And this company is on the verge of trying to find Atlantis as well for the money, the wealth, the land opportunity, whether they turn it into a theme park or whatever it may be. And that's where you're going to have the conflict. So it's going to be a race to the treasure and a race to discovery. For me, I would ask Harrison Ford if he wants to live or die. I'll let him have that choice. You know, it's his character, and if he wants to kill himself at the end to sacrifice himself for this new younger person, that's fine. That's how I do the movie. If he wants to be that person who can play cameos and just be that guy in the earpiece in future movies, just giving that advice on the research and stuff like that, and at the beginning or middle of the movie, and sets the person away on their adventure again. And then the sequels for me would be Dr. Jones. You know, so this guy will go on to try and get his doctorate, but he's still called Jones. It's just not Indiana anymore. And in terms of casting, the way I looked at it, there's a couple of different ways I was going. It could be younger or older playing younger. So when I was looking at younger, I was looking at Caleb McLaughlin. He's from Stranger Things.
Yeah.
He's like 17. So if you went for that age, you got Justice Smith, who was in Detective Pikachu. So he's like 26, but then you got John Boyega, he's 27, and you know their relationship worked in Star Wars. You know their screen chemistry worked. You know John Boyega, I think he can really tap into that racial stuff. You know, and that might motivate him in his role and bring that through with everything that's been going on. My other one was Daniel Kaluuya. He's 30 from Get Out, so I think again he can play younger if he needs to be like a mature student. So yes, that's how I was gonna take the franchise. So,
I was going to say one thing was that you said when you said about the young student being also having the last name Jones work, and where you said it could be Dr. Jones, I think you could I mean, a lot of fans, there would be a lot of backlash, like lightning bolts from Zeus backlash, but you could still call it Indiana because Indiana Jones isn't his name. His name is Henry Jones Jr.
That's true. Didn't even think about that.
But they said Indiana was the dog.
Snap. There you go. So Indiana Jones. So you can keep the surname and then have it as Indiana Jones.
Spielberg was talking on the thing, one of the publications, newspapers, and he what it called submitted Indiana Joan, as in like the woman's name, Joan, because he sees that it's going to be handed over to a woman later on. Let's see.
I mean, I think with so many franchises have been handed over to female empowerment at the moment, you know, with Star Wars and stuff like that. I want to keep it as a strong male-centric character for that adventure part. And you've also got the comparisons then with Tomb Raider. And obviously they're looking to do a sequel with that, and I just don't want that to kind of cross over. So that's why I was going for that, but totally recast it with a black actor. So, Sasha, if you had creative control, what would you do with Indiana Jones?
We're waiting on this.
Oh no, is he stuck?
Is he stuck? Find the mute button. Yeah, we got you. Oh, Sasha's moment, time to shine.
Oh,
to be honest, it's like Stark and Frozen. Okay, maybe it wasn't meant to be.
All right, Sasha, you're back in the room.
So yeah, what was I going to say? Lost my train of thought. Yeah, no, to be honest, all interesting points. Funnily enough, I like most of them. Not all of them, but for me, you got Atlantis wrong.
Okay.
If you're going to do Atlantis, you do it right. You adapt the fate of Atlantis. You CGI him. In fact, here's the thing. I'm both pro reboot in a way, as well as I'm pro Ford carrying it on. In my mind, if he was to carry it on and do another one as Old Indy, I'd set it before Crystal Skull. Okay, because like Temple of Doom was a prequel, because it's actually Temple of Doom, Raiders, then Last Crusade in actual order. Just because it's the last film with Ford or last films with Ford doesn't mean that it has to be that way. He's still old enough to look like how he does back in Crystal Skull, so it could be that era. And also, as much as people didn't like Crystal Skull, I felt it was a good send-off for the character. He was reunited with his family. He got married to Marion, who was the original girl from the original movie. I just felt it was a good way to, send the character off, to retirement, as you speak. I don't think it should go forward, because the more forward you go in time, the less of the aesthetic of Indiana Jones you lose. Okay. The reason why I'm against killing him completely is because if you follow the actual continuity by the creator, old George Lucas, Indy actually lives up until the 1990s, to be honest. Because if you look at the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, Ford showed up in a couple of them, but he was played by an older actor called George Hall, and it was him in the current present day, boring young whippersnappers with his cane, going back in my day, would be, going around Marcus's museum going, oh, you see that? I found that, and this is the tale. And, you know what I mean? Indy's still about, like, in the 1990s at least. 2000's probably stretching it, because he looked like he was on his last legs, in that series.
Yeah, well, exactly. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that was set in 59, and he was looking old. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, hell, at the way we're going, if Harrison Ford really wants to play him, he may as well get some blue screen, get George to like refilm George Hall's like bits and swap them out, man. But in terms of like carrying on with Harrison Ford, if you're going to do an adventure with him as an old man set before Crystal Skull, personally I'd like to see one where Short Round's grown up, okay, and he's doing the martial arts and shit as that kind of sidekick kind of thing.
Versus ninjas.
Yeah, versus ninjas, man. No, just anything like in Orient, that would be kind of cool. But at the same time, I'm not dead set on that. That's just an idea kind of thing. But if we're talking about my dream idea, it would be, it would literally be to de-age Harrison Ford, not just for one movie. It would have to be a multiple movie gig because one, he's old, he's still in shape. So I would have him. I would literally go 3-picture deal. Can you guys hear anything in the background there?
No.
No. Okay. Cool.
I just muted mine because there's a helicopter above my house. I don't know why.
Okay. So basically, 3-picture deal, obviously because of CGI and stuff. And hang on, give
me. Something's irritating him.
We'll take a moment. Thanks, Sasha. I'm going to have to edit this podcast even more now.
I can add something to that. I really don't like CGI. What I call this particular one, the de-aging thing, because I watched The Irishman. Irritated me through half the movie because I could see their faces.
It was poorly done with The Irishman.
Sorry, guys. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, there was just some noise in the background, kind of thing.
No worries. If you want to just pick up on a 3-picture deal.
Yeah, 3-picture deal. Obviously, first out the gate, adapt The Fate of Atlantis. I'm not going to go into it. Just read it. It's amazing. More importantly, because like that book, I would say you reintroduce the character in the fashion of Raiders for a new audience, if that makes sense. Have it the same tone as Raiders to the T, mainly because we're reintroducing Ford to the world again. You know what I mean? We want to make it relevant in the fact that it's the reason why I put Raiders top tier is because the other films was kind of a more diluted version of the character, exploring different ways with him, which is cool. But that first movie, he was just so badass. You know what I mean? When you watch a Bond movie, whenever they introduce a new Bond or whenever, you know, they introduce Bond in a movie, he's just badass. He is Bond. You know what I mean? And if you look at the DNA of Indiana Jones, it came from James Bond. That's why Sean Connery played his dad. So, you know, you want it to be a standalone adventure. It doesn't have to connect the T's, etc. But it could have like you know, little nods and stuff. But I'd say follow Fate of Atlantis more or less to the T. Obviously, some of it would have to be adapted because comic book and video games, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
A film adaptation. There are certain stuff that you could have creative license to change. Like I would change the start of the comic book because the start of the comic book is a dream. And you know what I mean? People don't like dream sequences. It's a cop out.
I agree with that, yeah.
But it's a cop out. But, you know, if you were to start off, for those that know Fate of Atlantis listening to this podcast, I'd probably set it when he's younger, when he's even more younger, when he first meets Sophia Hapgood, and show the beginnings of what would lead them up to Atlantis. Because there's a MacGuffin and, you know, like in true indie fashion, it goes away and then he catches up with it later on in his life. But I did that, Fate of Atlantis, and the other two could be whatever the studio wants. You play, well, you made me do my movie. Let's play ball with what MacGuffin you guys want, etc. Have Ford as the guy and send him off with 3 kick-ass movies where he's in his youth, and we get more indie. The rebooted route. I would, if you were to reboot, it wouldn't necessarily be a reboot. It'd just be another character in the role, like Bond. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the Bond route is the way to go.
Yeah, exactly. That way, all of these adventures happened just with a different actor, and you know, if you look, and because Young Indy is canon, that was with a different actor. I mean, hell, Sean Patrick Flanley, he may be like 51, but he still looks like he could don the whip, man. Not saying that I'd pick him because he's not bankable, but you know what I mean? Like, I guess, you know, hardcore fans would be like, oh, shit. And then it will really look like, damn, he grew up as that guy. But I wouldn't use him. I would get a brand new actor. I personally felt that Alden Ehrenreich played a really good Han Solo, which essentially is Indiana Jones. He would be my top pick. If not, I could see if you're going older, Bradley Cooper. I could see what's his face? Oh shit, forgotten the guy's name. Chris Pine as well. You know,
let me throw some actors out to you because I think
they have.
Yeah, I'll throw some actors out to you and see what you think of them. I think Chris Pratt is a bit too on the nose for me. It's
I don't
more
like
lift-
him.
it's
He
more
just
lifting-
doesn't have that thing.
Yeah, and I think it's just lifting the character out of Jurassic Park. I think he's trying to play almost like a Indiana Jones
Yeah.
in that movie. So I wouldn't have him. But so here's
But
some
the
names
thing
for
is,
you.
he's fine. He's fine in that movie. He just
Yeah.
doesn't work as Indiana Jones.
Yeah. So here's some names that you. He's
Yeah.
got a real mixture here. So Kit Harington from Game of Thrones.
Oh, was it?
Not my vote.
Maybe I'd have to see a screen test.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Chris
have to see a
Evans.
screen test because I can't get Jon Snow. Chris Evans, Captain America.
Mhm.
Maybe. I'm not
I like
against it, but it's
I
a
do like
maybe.
the Pine. I do like the Pine idea.
Chris Pine one, yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's got that. Because Chris Pine has charisma. You know what I mean? He has a natural charisma, which is what you need from Indiana Jones. When you look at him
Yeah.
in Raiders, that first instinct, there's no dialogue. There is no dialogue. His first introduction to the screen is when he whips the gun out the guy's hand, and then he just walks into the shadow. Very much a shadow. Much like when Sean Connery just kind of like, you know what I mean, turns the chair, smokes the cigar, blows
Yeah.
the smoke out and says, "My name's Bond, James Bond." You know what I mean? It's, you know, the visual imagery, everything is cool without even having to say much. You know this is the guy. And,
Yeah.
you know,
So
that's
what about,
why,
so here's
that's
another
what,
one
you
then.
know,
So what about Zachary
when I think of, no, I don't see it.
Army Hammer?
Yes. Very good
Arm
choice.
Hammer, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
very good choice. He has got it.
And
but
my last one was Carl Urban.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love Carl Albert.
Yeah, Carl Urban would be fantastic.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
me personally, I would cast younger
Mm-hmm.
for a reboot. Not when I say reboot, I don't mean reboot. But
Yeah.
I liked what they did with Casino Royale, where they went to his beginnings. If you were going to introduce a new actor, I'd go back to his beginnings. Not too. And the thing is about Indiana Jones is, if you watch the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, I'm not going that far, but I'm going young enough where I'm thinking an adventure where he learns stuff, where he becomes the guy that, you know, guy that.
Can
he
I
is.
suggest something?
And I would have him team up with an old. Yeah, go on.
I was basically going to say, you could potentially throw away the time frame. If you get a new guy and starting off early, forget the time frame. It doesn't need to fit anywhere.
No,
they
it
just
doesn't.
need to be stories.
So Daniel Craig, Pierce Brosnan, they're all different ages, but they have the history of the previous movies. It doesn't matter how old the character is in the actor.
Not only that, it doesn't even matter that if they came before and after, because they
Mhm.
don't really refer to them at all.
Oh yeah, totally. But my original idea with a new actor would be very much Casino Royale inspired, where it's his first, where it's like his first kind of like,
outing.
oh okay, outing kind of thing. And when
right.
And when I say that, he was trained by Marion's father. Okay, Abner Ravenwood. Okay, so Abner Ravenwood, as a fan, I think you'd pick an older actor. You pick, well, hell, if Harrison Ford wants to be the guy literally passing the torch, that would be quite fun. That'd be quite a fun nod. But again, I think that probably wouldn't be a good idea, because like Bond, you wouldn't really want to have Sean Connery come back and cameo in a Bond film, because you want that Bond to own it and have it be its own thing. But I'd think as a mentor figure, obviously, if you want to keep the Bond thing, have Pierce Brosnan. He'd be fantastic, bringing back the Bond kind of thing as Abner Ravenwood. You could even go with Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is kind of like proven as being the mentor.
He's trained
of
everybody else. He's
so-
trained Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. So
Indiana Jones.
Exactly. So he may as well be Abner. But you guys kind of get where I'm going with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where I'm going with that. Hell, you know what? I'm not even against Abner being black, because we never met her father. It could be her foster father. I mean, he could be Denzel.
Snap.
He could be Denzel. I'm just saying, like, it's not, we've never met the guy. You assume he's he's white, but it could be anybody. It could be anybody. That's just me playing with expectations there. But you know, it's quite literally Abner Ravenwood showing him, you know, how to go. You don't necessarily have to have Marion in that movie, because obviously that's another time, that's another thing to tell. But you know, if once you introduce Abner, you're just like, oh shit, that's who taught him shit. And you could even bring a younger Marcus into it as well, and you know, have maybe a set piece where like it's in the museum and they're like, shit, they're being confronted by people, and like, which way, Marcus? And he gets lost in his own museum. So like you could do stuff like that, man. Hell,
I just thought,
but I just think.
I just thought of something. What you're talking about, you know,
Please
other
go.
teaching him, you can actually have another student, like let's say with Indiana Jones, but a parallel story is going off, and you don't have to worry about Harrison Ford and so on and so forth. Just one of the other students of Vietnam and his stories, living the same dream, living the same era.
What you were saying, Sash, about like, you know, possibly having it like, okay, having young Indy taught by Abner, you could also do things like, I mean, if you're taking that Casino Royale route, you can do so many things, i.e. you can introduce Salah, you can introduce Belloc, you can introduce like...
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that... You know what? It's kind of like, I like that we meet those characters in their movies rather than, you know, rather than automatically just, you know, shoving them down the audience, like, remember this guy and everything. Because like every Bond picture, you can have a little, you know, nod, but if you're going to do that, you've got to think what you're going to add to those characters that the audience don't need or want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from.
Considering that we've already had, we've actually, if it's going to be connected to what's come before, a younger version of him, and so does Marcus. Marcus shows up because Indy's dad's actually in it as well. Because that TV series starts off when he's 8 years old, and it actually shows him how he learns like archaeology from his home tutor, Miss Seymour, and stuff like that. I would actually draw from the Chronicles, to be quite honest, because there's characters from there where you're like, oh, I wish they were in the movies and
Yeah,
stuff.
I'll see more of them. Yeah,
He used to be you know, a spy for the US government at one point. And you know, he was known as Corporal Lafons for the Belgian army, because when he signed up, he signed up before the Americans fought the war, because he was in London at the time during World War One. And yeah, there's just so much lore there that you could bring in. Hell, they even brought up references in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from that TV show, when he tells Mutt that he rolled with Pablo Escobar, which is actually the pilot of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, where he got kidnapped by Pablo Escobar and ended up joining them for a bit, actually, like, you know, joining them and their whole thing. And that,
I don't remember that.
There's just so many, there's just so many stuff they could pull from, and make the old stuff fresh and new. And I'm not dismissing entirely with Salah, but I feel with Salah that what's the guy? Gimli from Lord of the Rings?
John Rhys
Davis is a hard actor to recreate.
Yeah.
He's a very hard actor to recreate. Even when he was younger, he's so iconic, where it's just like, I'd kind of avoid that, because you know what's really cool about Raiders of the Lost Ark? The fact you don't know anybody. You know what I mean? And if you were to be that person to watch the films in order and you know him already, you're like, okay, you kind of take away that mistrust thing. Do you know what I mean? Because when you watch at Raiders, when he goes down with the scepter, you know, when he goes down with the scepter and he's got the little glass thing that he gets from Marion, and he's there, and when the rope goes away, you know what I mean? Yeah, we know he's gone with the Nazis, but we don't know whether he's going to come back or not. Do you know what I mean? And also, we don't know whether he's going to double cross him or not. The minute you introduce Salah before Raiders, the mystique's gone. You know what I mean? The mystique's gone, and that's why I'd avoid, you know, bringing old school people, especially if it's set before. You know, if it was set after, then definitely bring them in. Bring them in.
I think it depends on your audience, though, because if you look at the Star Wars prequels, you know, took the mystique away from Vader, and some people are not bothered by it. You know, some people hate the fact that if you watch it in order, you get the reveal way too early. Other people, they don't care. So I suppose it depends on the audience in terms of how everybody will take that differently. So they wouldn't mind him being introduced earlier. But then again, like you say, you know, and I think, again, we've got creative control, so it's something we wouldn't do, but we can understand the studios doing it because it doesn't matter to them.
That's right.
Okay, well, I think we agree that there's pretty much so much that can be done with Indiana Jones, whether it's spin-offs, a direct sequel, recasting like Bond style, but we do know that Ford is coming back for the next one, so we'll have to wait and see what that turns out, see how many of ideas pop up in the next one, and look, it's Indiana Jones. We know we're going to go see it, so let's see what they bring. Let's see what they bring to the table. So that's it for today's episode. Sasha, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Sashman3 on Twitter. That's about it.
And Neil, where can we find you?
You find me on Instagram at Shoot for Moon Pics.
And Sal, where can we find you if you want to be?
You can find me at Sal_F1 at Twitter.
Okay. You can follow me on Twitter at Kenan Talks Film. Please let us know your thoughts on the episodes and suggest some movies for us to discuss in the future. You can also find us on the Zito's Gang Movie Podcast, where we discuss all the latest movie news. So go on Twitter for at Zito's Gang. You can also find us on YouTube and Stitcher. But for all our episodes, you can catch them on YouTube, iTunes, Google, and Stitcher. If you like what we do, please like, subscribe, and share our podcast across social media. If you thought this podcast sucked, then just like, subscribe, and share it ironically. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for today, guys.
Just teleported out of the cast.
Yeah. Thanks very much for attending, guys. Thanks very much for listening, and until next time.
Cool.
Goodbye.